everybody you want to meet is only at most 6 degrees of separation. And so if you really want to meet that CIO or the head of a particular office at a federal agency, you just begin to figure out who's there. Another way to see this is through LinkedIn, right? If I want to connect with somebody on LinkedIn, LinkedIn will tell me how many degrees of separation. Usually you're only 3 degrees of separation in LinkedIn away from somebody. But I have, LinkedIn will tell me that I have, I don't know, 1 million plus people in my network. And what they mean is I have 18,000 followers. And so, in roughly about 18,000 connections. So they're my first connections. I can reach out to somebody within my first degree connection to connect with a second or a third degree relationship. And the reason you want to pay attention to this is when you're trying to find people or get their information, et cetera, just remember that sometimes you just ask a friend to ask a friend to ask a friend, and you'll get in, right? It's a pretty straightforward process. It takes a little practice, right? This is a skill set I'm teaching you today. It's not, let me just throw something out there and conceptual. It's a skill set. And the way you get better with skills is first you learn it, you learn how to do it, and then you practice it over and over again. So I'm going to talk to you from that perspective today on how to find people in a program office. Just to make sure we're all on the same page here, right? When I'm talking about a program office, what I mean are the people who have the need for your services or your products. So you have a contracting officer, they're on the acquisition side, but they're not on the program side. The program side is the way I talk is the buyer, right? The contracting officer signs contracts, but the buyer is really that end user, that office. And so program office might be somebody like PEO Digital underneath the Department of Navy. So PEO Digital is responsible for a lot of IT services. They're a program office I want to get into. In fact, they have subordinate program offices I might even further define. But let's just stay at a high level of PEO Digital. If I look at PEO Digital, then and I think about how can I get in there? Well, I'm going to give you 6 different tips for how you can do that. And so you can write it down because I didn't write it down to give you. But the first way that you can get in is through industry days. And so when I say industry days, I'm talking about attending industry days or following up and getting slides from industry days. An example is the Department of Navy, Nav War, somebody like that will do an industry day with PEO Digital, highlighting them. Any of these organizations, they might highlight one of your program offices. And when you look at that industry day set of slides in there, they'll often tell you who works, or at least who's some of the leadership folks within that program office. And so now you've got the names, right? That's one way to get names is industry day slides. Don't discount that sometimes there's other organizations than the actual agencies doing industry day type events. And so there might be a group like AFCEA or whoever that hosts these folks, and you can try to pick up their slides as well. Second tip, website, right? I know this is a straightforward one, but if you went into the Navy site and went into PEO Digital's, the program office site, you can learn a lot about that organization's leadership and who's on their teams, because they'll often share their org chart, right? So you can get in there and look and just see, start documenting who's in there. Going with that website, another tip that could be handy on a website for finding people's names are fact sheets. So strategic documents tend not to have people's names as much in them, but more often than not, if they do fact sheets about certain things. And so PEO Digital has a bunch of profiles or technical solution areas, and they'll have a fact sheet for each one. And they'll tell you 1 or 2 people who the program lead and the deputy lead are, so you can get their names right away from that. Another huge one that I like is going into LinkedIn, right? So if I went into LinkedIn right now, I could go to PEO Digital, and I could find PEO Digital has a company page on LinkedIn, right? If you're not familiar, you have individual profiles, like you're watching my LinkedIn training today, or my training on LinkedIn personal profile, but we also have a company page for GovCon Chamber. Well, PEO Digital has the same. And when you go to that LinkedIn company page for PEO Digital or whatever program office that you can find, often they'll tell you who's working. So you can get in there, and I can find hundreds and hundreds of people working at PEO Digital. And if I'm really lucky, they've got clear titles, job titles that tell me what part of PEO Digital they're working on. So I might not be interested in infrastructure, but I am interested in cloud or cyber or something in there. data as an example. So I can find hundreds of people who work in PEO Digital, a program office I want to get into and own from a seller's perspective, right? So that's a great way to find people's information. Piggybacking on that one just for a second, one that I didn't write, but if you find people who don't have a company page the way I said, well, you can go find, and the minute you find the first person, you can then go back into LinkedIn and see, well, who are they connected with? What content are they engaging with? Look at their activity or their posts. And when you look at the content that they're engaging in that's related to Navy and maybe even PEO Digital as an example, you might find other people. And so I did this once with the NGA, National Geospatial Agency. But I went in and saw something the CTO was putting out. When I got in there, all of a sudden I got the CIO, the CISO, and 3 or 4 other leaders from NGA where I couldn't find their information anywhere, but they were all engaged in this discussion about NGA's future software direction or something. And it was perfect. And so that's a way, I didn't put it in my notes, but that's a way you can find more people related to that program office, is look at somebody's content who is in that office. Okay, so a lot of tips here so far: industry day, website, LinkedIn company page, LinkedIn relationships. Another one, which is a great one, is just Google, right? Going to Google, but how? Right? I used to think that everybody just knew how I do it, but I began to realize you don't. Sometimes I like to give a little bit more deeper tips for that. So sometimes it's above you and sometimes it's below you. You just ask me if you need clarity. But if you go into Google and you know that you're trying to reach PEO Digital or this kind of thing, start doing keyword searches. And one thing you might consider doing is filtering that search down where you're searching for, let's say, PEO Digital, and you say file type. Somebody can write this into the chat for me, but you can just do file type : PDF, and then only PDF documents are coming back. And the reason this could be helpful is maybe you're getting slide decks that people have presented all around that you couldn't think of to search for specifically. But if you find something that has PEO Digital in any of the slides and it's a PDF, then it could be valuable and you can search through that. Another way to filter it down so you're just looking into the military is maybe say PEO Digital site : .navy.mil kind of thing. And somebody try to throw that one in there as well. So thanks, Gus. There's the search one in chat. But the same thing, site : .navy.mil. Now I'm searching for PEO Digital anywhere within the Navy's site. The reason that's really helpful is because there's newsletters that the Navy puts out that you might not even know about that are kind of down deep. But when you do the search, it surfaces it up. Google puts it at the top page. And right from there, you can go look at the CIO's newsletter or somebody else's newsletter who is talking about PEO Digital, which then leads you down this rabbit hole of finding people. You might find articles that somebody in your target program office is writing. Okay, so let me come back. That was, so another one here is matchmaking, right? And so some of these, for locating their contact information and finding out who they are, they're similar tools, similar approach. But matchmaking is a great way to find out. DHS, I think Russ or somebody else told me, and I'm sorry, I can't remember, told me about DHS has got a vendor outreach session coming up in February or end of January. I don't know. Somebody put it in the chat. Let me know. But the idea is when you go to a matchmaking session, sometimes you'll meet people who are from the program office who can talk to you about it. But most times you won't, but you can meet people who are in the agency and you can have a discussion with them about this is where I'm trying to go. I'm trying to get into a program office within your organization. These are the folks this is the organization I want to get into. Who's working there? Who can I talk to? And that really goes with my last tip that is, some real secret stuff here. Just ask. So how do you find out who's in a program office? Ask. Who can you ask, right? Go watch another training I've done. I've done multiple trainings about this, about how to penetrate an agency and really get in and begin to develop relationships. But you can ask a small business specialist to give you a referral. You can find an opportunity on FPDS that was awarded out of the target program office you want to go to. Find the contracting officer, reach in and call them and say, hey, just a quick question. Who's the lead over there? Who can I talk to? You can reach out to a PCR from the SBA. You can reach out to organizations. You can absolutely reach out to your Apex accelerators, the PTACs, right? Their new name is called Apex Accelerator. But you can reach out to PTACs and ask them. You can ask other people who are in that organization that you might know, so teaming partners, et cetera. And then the last one is you can just go in and find out who's winning. So different companies that are winning and have contracts in there, and then reach out to their people and say, hey, I'm new to that agency. Any chance you could help me just get in the door, right? If you're going in humble and asking that, 9 times out of 10, people are going to help you, or maybe 1 time out of 10, but at least you're getting helped, right? So those are ways that you can find out who's out there, who's at a program office. So industry days, website, LinkedIn, multiple ways, Google, many ways, matchmaking sessions, or just ask the people around you. Don't hesitate to ask for help, and never, ever hesitate to give help. If you give help, asking becomes so much easier. It actually is harder to ask for help when you don't give help. It's a really kind of a weird thing. So if that makes sense, just put in know the right people into the chat. Know the right people. Let's see who's going to type 4 words so I can drink enough water. Yeah, I just saw somebody say, trying to get it off of LinkedIn. Let me give you a couple of other ways that you can do getting emails. So let's go into this last section I want to talk about today is how do you locate their phone number and email, right? How do you get this? And so as we move forward, I want to explain 6 ways again that I go in and try to find information, people's phone numbers and emails. And you're going to see it pretty similar. But the first place that could be very helpful to you and a great start is the GovCon Chamber of Commerce, right? The website is right there on the screen, www.govconchamber.com. Go to that website, our website, go to our homepage there. And on the homepage, you'll find the small business specialist directory. Over 1,000 names of agency points of contact. Over 100 different large primes and their small business liaison officers. So over 1,000 names, numbers, and emails. Great place to start. I talked about the Navy in my example. Well, there's 150, I think, Navy small business specialists. If I'm trying to find the name and email address for them, it's there. If I'm trying to use it as remember I said, ask somebody, I can use these folks and go, well, which ones are in NavWar, which tends to have a little bit of a higher connection to PEO Digital. How do I reach out to them specifically? So these directories that we have and we put out, and we're about to put out a new one because we've got, I think 100 new names we're updating. But these directories from the GovCon Chamber, these represent thousands and thousands of hours of my time and my team's time as we have gathered this, right? Me first over the years as I've just pulled this together for my own selfish needs, right? Of pulling together that CRM list of small business specialists. And then my team and I, as we said, let's just share this out with you. But when you download this directory, it will save you literally hundreds of hours of research time when you're trying to get into an agency. So definitely download that and start using it. The second way is staff directories. I don't know if you're familiar with this, but for many agencies, you can go in and they'll have a staff directory listed or a phone directory, right? So you go right in and type somebody's name. So if you can find their name in the first set of the training I did, you can go in here and type their name and into the directory. And if you're lucky, it comes right up with a phone number and email. So there's places like HHS, I know, has a lot of that information available, and other organizations like that. So look for a staff directory and see if you can find traction there. The third way, and I mentioned this earlier as how do you find people, the third way are agency fact sheets. And so these fact sheets tell you about what's the purpose of, so if I'm looking at a program office like PEO Digital, it's got subordinate activities. What's the purpose of this activity? What are we trying to get done? What are our major areas of work, which tells you what are the major areas they might buy your products or services on, what's it related to? And then in there is where you find their names I mentioned before. Well, also you can often find their phone numbers and email addresses. So download fact sheets for any target agency you have, program office you have, the fact sheets related to what you sell, and you can find those people's information in there. Another one that is awesome out there is the GAL. And so if you're not familiar with this one, this is more of an incumbent focused tool, but the GAL stands for Global Address List, right? It might be called something these days different, but the whole idea of a GAL is it's Outlook or Exchange inside of these agencies. And so if you're in there already, that's one of the things about incumbents. If you've got somebody's name, you can just look up the GAL and find their contact information, right? There's some rules about how you can use that. That's up to you to follow whatever policies and rules are in place. But if you're in already and you've got an email account within DHS, it's not unusual for you to look in the email directory, the GAL, the Global Address List, to find somebody's information, because no one was going to sit there and penalize you for walking down the hallway to somebody and say, hey, I see you, let's talk, right? And so that's just the value of being an incumbent, is that you have access to this information. But inside the GAL, you can not only find somebody's information, right, their phone number and email, but you can also find people related to their services. When I was supporting the VA, I would look for facility CIOs. These are CIOs at each hospital. Well, they belong to a single group called facility CIOs. So it was easy to find that information. You want to use it within any kind of rules that are in place, but it's available to you. More importantly, if you want to, you can always point to the government person, ask them that they would give you the intro and remind them of the GAL, because most people don't even know about the GAL. But somebody in the government could easily look in the GAL, give you the phone number and email, and say, yeah, here it is. I'll make an introduction. Okay, so number 5 on this is websites, right? Going out to websites and doing exactly that search I said. But in this case, you might search for somebody's name. And so I'll use their first and last name, like, John Smith. And first I'll try PEO Digital, then I'll try John Smith Navy, Nav War or something. And you just have to get a little creative and get good at using Google. Google, I know it sounds so minimal, like a basic tool. It's hard for us to see the huge value that comes from free. There's this false understanding that the higher the price, the more valuable it is. We just naturally kind of lean that way. But Google is one of the most valuable tools in our life, yet it's free, right? So how's that logic work? But get in there and learn this tool, because if you learn it, that's one of the things that gets me access to everything. I just figure out, how do I search so I'm finding the information? But I often see GovTribe come up. I actually subscribe to GovTribe now because I got tired of taking their stuff for free, because every time I search Google, one of the first people coming back with useful phone numbers and emails, not just names, but phone numbers and emails, is GovTribe, right? I love that tool, by the way. But they kept coming back, so I went and subscribed. I figured I'd true up. But you can do a lot of good searches on websites, on Google, but also you can do it specifically inside of a website. I talked about using Staff Directories, but you can just use their own search bar where you can type in somebody's name and see if it comes back. The last thing related to today's training is just, what do you do if you can't find information? Just go back to that one I said about finding people. The very last tip is ask somebody. Most people want to help you succeed. So if you can get in and ask them for a name, a number and an email for somebody you already know, they're going to be willing to help with you. You might sit there and actually, if you're looking at 5 or 10 people or 100 people at PEO Digital, you might go in and talk to 3 or 4 people whose information you were able to get. And part of your call plan is to ask for the phone number and email to these other people, or better yet, an introduction to these people. So that last tip on locating contact information is to meet with somebody in the office and ask for their colleagues' information once you get there. So as a recap, we talked about finding people and their contact information. I want to leave you with one tip that you can take away today, and that is to go download our directory. I just talked about this, right? The directory has over 1,000 names. It's free. Download that thing, find the names information, the contact information for the agencies you're trying to target, and begin to reach out and use them as the first step to trying to find a lot more information. Hey, we have a program called BD Accelerator Workshop. If you'd like to work with me, we'd love to have you join us. If your company's at the right stage, that generally is $1 million plus. To learn more, send me a message in LinkedIn. By the way, if you found the training valuable, throw a thanks into the chat. We always appreciate that. And I want you to remember, government contracting is not a secret. It's just a process. I'll see you in the next